Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, David. Great pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I saw your background, and looks like you are the serial entrepreneur and work has a fantastic experience in the startup scene, right? And or you work with the Rocket Internet as well, right? So
Yes,
why don't you start off by introducing yourself and then your background and a journey to founding the Qraved?
sure. Sounds good. So a bit of my background, I am a Korean that is doing startups in Southeast Asia for the past almost 10 years now. What brought me to Southeast Asia is a kind of chain reaction of a few different things in my life. I grew up in the US as a child. I came to Korea in my middle school, late elementary school days, and kind of experienced Korea from a foreigner lens, and kind of went in towards the direction of studying statistics, entering my career into financial services, and working with one of the biggest Korean financial services company and expanding. And at the time, it was really big on BRIC countries, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China
Yes.
as the next location. This is like 2007, 2008, 2009. And so I had the privilege to really study the BRIC countries and the whole concept of emerging markets. And kind of was in the financial service sector for a while. And then kind of the big turning point to startup was my time at INSEAD. So when I did my MBA at INSEAD, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different things. The world was changing. Groupon was a big phenomenon across the world, daily deals, e-commerce. It was just like a crazy phenomenon when I was kind of getting out of INSEAD in 2010. And essentially that was kind of the kind of timing that I got to get acquainted with Rocket Internet. And so Rocket Internet was the company that was responsible for Groupon's expansion globally. And they were to a successful level in many markets to now introduce more models, right? So it wasn't just
Yes.
the Groupon model, but it was other models. And I was one of the first members in Asia Pac to start a travel accommodation company called Wimdu, which was across Southeast Asia and Asia Pac. And so that's kind of, it was meant to be built as a competitor of Airbnb, and essentially executed that across Asia Pac. Also later, in 2011, we also made the decision to start e-commerce in the region, and that was Zalora, Lazada, Foodpanda, kind of launching it out of Singapore and expanding it across the 7 countries in the region. And from there on, it was just a really exciting journey to introduce a totally new concept of e-commerce into the region, with really smart minds and hardworking people to make a difference. And that was kind of an exciting journey. And then how I came to Indonesia in the end was in 2013, or sorry, 2012. I was quite interested to see what Indonesia was like, because I was managing 7 countries in Southeast Asia. Singapore, Malaysia was always on top, but Indonesia was always like number 4, number 5 when it came to transactions and orders. So I was kind of curious of why is it so small when compared to the population being so
Population,
different.
yes.
Yeah, so I just didn't understand it because all I knew about Indonesia was Bali at the time.
Right.
So I was just curious, and I came over to Indonesia. Luckily, had some good colleagues and friends that were familiar with Indonesia in the Rocket Internet sphere, and came to Indonesia, fell in love with the people and the culture, but also identified almost immediately why it's so different. Because when I landed and I experienced Indonesia, everybody was using BlackBerry. Right, so this is
Yes.
2012, right? So nobody had a smartphone, nobody had a computer, or it was very rare to have a computer. So it was a really interesting timing to see Indonesia, and we'll be working on e-commerce and see how different it is to other countries. But then also in 2013 was when BlackBerry launched their BlackBerry Messenger application, and that's the rest is history, because that kind of opened the doors for Android and iOS. And then 2013 onward is the era of smartphones and applications and what we see it now.
Yes. Yeah. I was curious, actually, how you end up living and working in Indonesia. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. It sounds like a very interesting journey. And in
it
fact,
was.
in the past couple of decades, I mean, everybody talk about Indonesia because, as you mentioned, it has a large population, 200, more than 200 million people, and also talk about long-term potential in terms of younger population, growing consumer, and then et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, in the past, we had a more the negative opinion about the potential of Indonesia because we talk about that long-term potential story more than decades, right? But never happened. But I think you are in the Indonesia right timing, right place because in terms of startup scene, is we can see that is it exploring, right? Much faster than any other Asian country now. So that's my
It's re-
impression.
yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because I mean, when I first came to Indonesia in 2012, everybody said, hey, you foreigner, why are you here?
Right,
E-commerce is not going to happen." A lot of people doubted that. Yeah, it's going to take at least another 5 years to have any e-commerce traction. In 2017, which we know Gojek was founded in 2015. A lot of different amazing businesses were built already before that, and I think it's been a really interesting journey. I do point it out to many factors why Indonesia is successful now. I do think there's the capital and interest for emerging markets and the market itself, but also I think the government played a big part in helping entrepreneurs and startup founders to fear less and execute. And I've said this to a lot of Korean media because it's
yes,
very different from Korea on
right.
that regard. And then yeah, I think the consumers are also very interesting. We talk about, you just said the young population. I think that's not just about the potential; it's about the attitude, right?
Right.
Because I think Korea, Japan, or more developed markets, the population is a bit older, and they're not open for change
Stabilized,
or new.
stabilized, right?
Yeah,
They're
stabilized,
stabilized, right? But it's
right? So they're
that
not
very
interested.
dynamic. I agree. Yeah,
Exactly. So they're not interested in a new thing anymore, maybe.
right.
Whereas in Indonesia, everybody's interested in the new thing. So it's pretty
Yeah,
exciting and
yeah.
dynamic.
I talk about this topic a lot with other people. I mean, as comparing to Indonesia to the other country, like people always like we are trained in same school, same MBA, same consulting companies. So talk about top-down approach, right? Size of
Mm,
population, GDP per capita, and then I mean the size of industry, etc., etc. But if you look at the real market, real consumer on the ground, they are very different from that number, right? If I visit the Jakarta, big shopping mall in Jakarta, even though the GDP per capita of Indonesia is quite low as compared to other large economy in Asia,
sure.
but their purchasing power is much stronger than the much richer Asian country. That was very surprising to me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, so it's really hard to generalize Indonesia, right? So
Right.
Indonesia is 260 million people. Um, it is normal, like it's almost the size of the United States. So there is a ton of variety, a ton of differences. The segments are very different. I would say our segment, which is a very affluent upper middle class kind of segment that we accommodate for the most. That's like the population of South Korea, right? Like 50 million people are in that segment alone, right? So I think
Yes.
that's the really interesting part. How you look at Indonesia is that you can either look at the population and the number of businesses and go micro SME and talk about that, or you can talk about just sheer the value of people that actually do have wealth, and that number is still quite sizable. That can be a lot more interesting as well.
Yes. Another thing is traditional business, large company were not able to solve the problem in the Indonesia. That's why you need a lot of startup who can solve the problem. That's one of my observation. Yeah.
I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What problem are you solving, and what is your business model?
Sure. So Crave was founded in 2013. Our ambition was to um, help digitalize the F&B industry and like e-commerce, right? So I was working in e-commerce, more bringing products to the person where it's the home or the office, whereas we were seeing, and I was seeing, that people still love to go out in Asia, right? So which is different
Yes.
from North America. People love to go to coffee shops. People love to go to restaurants. They love to meet people face to face. So these businesses had a different challenge in attracting customers and keeping customers, and competing against so many other new restaurants popping up, the new thing, whatever not. And so that was kind of the big passion that we had to solve. How do you make these local restaurants and businesses grow profitably and sustainably without having to just go crazy, and spend money on social media channels or whatnot that might not give a good ROI. And so for the past years, we've offered various different services to our restaurants and local businesses. I think the big turning point though was the COVID-19 pandemic that has changed pretty much everything, right?
Right.
Because before, until 2019, we were more of a restaurant discovery, reviews, content, advertising platform. So a restaurant could be like, "Hey, we have some amazing burgers and meat dishes. I would like to promote this," and they would talk with us and figure out a way to promote it on across social media channels. Now with COVID-19, just because you promote it doesn't mean the actual customer will make their way to your place or they feel safe to come to your restaurant to be able to make an order. And also now, depending on some of the food delivery platforms like GoFood, GrabFood, and Shopee Food, they're great to get cheap new customers because they're subsidizing a lot of the promotions in many ways. But the issue is that it's very difficult as a restaurant business to directly communicate and engage with your customer base and encourage them to come back because an F&B is a really it's a frequency business. It's a business that you need regulars, and that's something that the big platforms don't have prioritization for. So right now, the problem we're solving is these restaurants to be able to directly engage with their customers, be able to send them messages, give them offers, accept orders for dine-in, takeaway, and delivery, and be able to really grow their business profitably and predictably.
Interesting. Yeah. And my next question is, how has COVID-19 impacted your business? You already explained a little bit, paved the way for the new business opportunity. And yeah, that's my next question.
Yeah. So if I give you a little bit of sense of Indonesia, how COVID happened, until March 2019, nobody thought that anything would happen. And I would actually go a few months earlier for the impact in Indonesia was more around, I think, September 2018. When 2019, 2019 was when WeWork didn't IPO successfully, and therefore had a significant impact on the amount of discounts that were offered for restaurants as marketing budgets, right? So previously, there was GoPay, Ovo, Dana, and many different platforms that were offering discounts for restaurants to offer to their customers. And that was kind of their marketing channel and how they got customers. Obviously, with that situation, a lot of those budgets were reduced, and a lot of restaurants didn't have a really good way to market themselves, right? And then the pandemic hit in March, and well, essentially the country and the city of Jakarta was shut down for April, May, and June. So 3 months fully closed down. It was a lot of panic for everybody, right? And interestingly enough, delivery was not the immediate option for a lot of these businesses because a lot of these businesses, unless they were already optimized for delivery, they really didn't have a delivery business. They're 80-90% of their sales, these are restaurants in malls, these are restaurants in very high dense kind of commercial areas and food areas. These are slightly the nicer restaurants. They didn't really have a delivery option. So when it was lockdown, they were like in panic. They were like, okay, what do I do? Do I build a delivery offering and menu? Is it going to sell? And we were definitely talking with a lot of our partners, including actually the shopping malls, because we actually work with shopping malls as well, to think about, okay, the delivery problem is going to be what GoFood, GrabFood solve, and they should be doing what they're doing well on. We're going to try to figure out a way to, figure out a way to help get your delivery orders a bit more, especially from repeating customers. So it's really hard to get your second order from a customer. If you're selling them fried chicken and they liked it, there's a good chance they're going to order again. But you just have a lot of competition, and that's why they go to your competitor. And that's something we wanted to solve. And that was a problem that was presented to us. And then actually after the lifting of the lockdown, a lot of customers were concerned to go to restaurants, right? And they were concerned to engage with waiters and whatnot because of the concern of the transmission of COVID-19. And then that was the timing when the Indonesian government actually made a mandate for restaurants in malls to have a QR code instead of a physical menu. So if you went to any restaurant in Jakarta, you would be given this QR barcode, you scan it, and then it shows like an image or a PDF file of the menu, and you can't do anything with it, but you see the menu that way, and then you just order to the waiter or you order at the counter or whatnot. So that was kind of the changes that was happening because of COVID and government policy and trying to contain the transmission of the disease. And I think that kind of pushed us more and more towards contactless becoming something big. And now, almost 12 months later, I think what has happened is that we're in another lockdown, or we just got out of it this week. So this week, it's now reopened for 25% capacity if you're vaccinated, and so it's reopened again. But so really, about we're kind of rethinking because of COVID, how do we help these businesses still navigate through these very difficult times? How do they offer a service in the new normal that will get their staff to be safe, but also their customers to be safe? So a lot of different contactless solutions, QR ordering, online ordering, delivery, membership programs. So a lot of things that maybe the big mega apps won't be able to offer right now.
Yeah, very interesting. People say that the crisis is an opportunity. Yeah, I don't think it is a cliche. Yeah, we have observed going through the very large international crisis. We see a lot of positive changes, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, do you see any new trend in Indonesian market, especially in startup scene, I mean, going through the pandemic now?
Yeah, I think the big thing about what's going on and what companies are getting funded for, it seems, is the dramatic speed of digitalization for all types of industries, right? So MSMEs or whatever not, everything that used to be manual or traditional or analog, there's this amazing push towards digitalization from the government, from subsidies, from funding, from advancement of technology and talent. I think that's kind of the really interesting push right now in Indonesia, where many different startups are working on different problems to digitalize day-to-day operational workflow of businesses, including bookkeeping, taking orders, order management, supply chain, logistics, payments, and whatnot. And for us, we're seeing that trend is really interesting for us, and us being the platform for food in Indonesia helps us really focus on the problems for food, right? Because there are a lot of players out there that is more general. So they want to cover all different types of businesses, whereas we are focused on the F&B industry and the lifestyle retail industry, and that allows us to cater more customized solutions for them and try to make that big shift in digitalizing all their transactions, digitalizing all their management and their operations, and that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Another guest on my podcast, he's investor, one of the largest VC investor in China. He talked about the digitization of a mom and pop store as a next target and focus area for investment.
Right.
What about that business model in Indonesia?
I think it's really hot. I mean, a lot of good friends are actually now founders of businesses that work on that. Good company called Bukulkas. Krishnan is a good friend of mine from our Rocket days. And bravo to all these companies that are helping digitalization for micro SMEs. I do think the market size for Indonesia for micro SMEs are enormous. And there's a huge opportunity there, right? So I think there is more and more opportunities and solutions on how you're going to give them the tools to get them not only to digitalize, but for them to actually be more better off, right?
Yes.
Make more money, make more margin and whatnot. And I think that's kind of still a bit of a challenge for that industry, because you can digitalize and you can get the transactions be recorded. So now you have a
Yes.
database. So you could offer some financial services and fintech, but I think when it comes to how do you make them actually make more money, that one is a bit more difficult.
Yes, I agree. It really needs a lot of coordination between the human being and the digitization, I think. Right?
Right, right,
It cannot solved by the one solution or one app. I agree.
right.
Yeah. So, what is your next step on top of your mind for the Craved or the after Crave?
Right. For the immediate stuff for Crave and Cubiz, we are focused on digitalizing online ordering or ordering as a whole in local businesses and restaurants, right? So what that means is we are primarily first focusing, we're focusing on geographical local economies, right? And local commerce. And in Indonesia case, as you rightfully said so, local economies are built around shopping malls.
Right.
Right. So we do work with the shopping mall operator themselves. We're helping them digitalize all the restaurants and food courts in the shopping mall. That way we would be able to start building that ecosystem, not only for the mall itself, but the whole ecosystem of different data points of different consumer preferences. And therefore we can introduce just more easier decision making from a consumer standpoint, but cheaper ways to get customers from a business standpoint. By, for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say you went, you and your family goes to a mall to have like Chinese food for lunch, and then when you're just as you made the order through a QR code and you paid, we already know that you just paid and you're just done. We send you a message saying, hey, here are some coffee options that you would really enjoy. Here are some new menus that they have.
Yep.
Here's a coupon for you. Or here's a dessert place that you can really enjoy and have a good time. Or if I already know you have kids, I'll send you, hey, here's a kids cafe. Why don't you go there? Right. And then later on, in the future, maybe next year onward, when movies become a big thing again, cinema could be another easy cross-sell, because I know you're at the mall. I know you went for Chinese food and you went to Starbucks. Why don't you come up? Maybe it's a good fit for Black Widow and the new movie, right? So, and then obviously for Indonesia, the final step for shopping mall visits is a supermarket. So you would go downstairs to the basement, buy something there, as long as you're encouraged for it. So that's kind of the local ecosystem we're building. We hope to make, from a consumer standpoint, make decision making really easy, and also being benefiting from the best deals also easy. From a local business standpoint, being able to reach out to your local customers, and not only as a new customer, but really as repeated customers. So how do I get you to the second time, the third time, and not just by number of times, but also frequency. So if you're a coffee shop, I want you to come to my coffee shop 5 times a week at least, right? And not go to my competitor next door, right? So how do I design a program to make sure that that happens? That's what we're really excited about with us in the future that we build.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time to introduce your interesting entrepreneur journey. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, David. Pleasure.